Welcome to Football Talking News. This is like an emergency show with Warren and Austin and Cody. We're going to go over today's moves, and if anything comes through, hopefully one of these guys will tell me, and we'll go over that too. Um, I know the moves haven't stopped yet, so first we'll start with the big players. Um, None bigger than the Patriots today. They spent a lot of money. I felt like they spent a lot of money on middle tier players. They didn't get anybody that's at the best of their position, except for maybe Jonnu Smith. Arguably, he's the best tight end available. And we'll go through those deals. So first was Jonnu, 4 years, 50 million. Is that a good fit for the Patriots?
I mean, it gives Cam a big target to throw to. They've already re-signed him, so it gives him a weapon that will be reliable and should help that offense.
I feel like he's a good blocker too, underrated blocker. He's a big guy. He's got a good catch radius. He might make up for some of Cam's inaccurate throws. I like the deal. I like the player. That's their best signing. And second best signing is Matt Judon, obviously, from the Ravens to the Patriots, 4 years, 56 million. I do think they overpaid him a little bit. They could have got somebody else a little cheaper, but I like Matt Judon a lot, and he's a good leader and a good guy, and people really respect him. He's a good locker room guy. Do you think that's a bit much for him, Cody, or?
I think he probably would have got the same if he would have waited it out somewhere else. Probably a little high, but I think we're gonna have to
14 mil. Yeah, 14 mil.
The thing about free agency is no matter what, unless you're bargain shopping, you're overpaying for guys. So, I mean,
True. That's why I'm happy the Bills did not make a splash today. We're going to be bargain shopping, and I'm here for it. So, the next they got Godchow from Miami, his defensive tackle, 2 years, 17 million. I thought that was a little bit much for him. He probably could have gotten for cheaper.
They're just gonna overpay for people. It's kind of what we talked about yesterday. They're gonna have to overpay people to get people to play there.
To overcome the Belichick factor. Yeah. But see, Jonnu Smith makes sense because he comes from Mike Vrabel, a Belichick protege.
But Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick are very different coaches. Mike Vrabel's I will cut my dick off for a Super Bowl, and Bill Belichick is like on to Cincinnati. Like
so,
Mike Vrabel is all emotion.
The Godchow pick makes sense too because he's from Brian Flores, so it's a Belichickian.
I also think Brian Flores is different than Bill Belichick because I don't think Brian Flores is a liar.
This is, I think, a bit of an overpaid. Nelson Agholor, they get him for $13 million a year. Come on, you don't think that's an overpayment for a wide receiver 2, maybe 3 at best?
He's the number 1 on their team.
He's gonna be number 1 on their team for sure.
So they had to give him.
He's got to learn how to catch a ball.
He did really well this year.
Yeah, but he's got to learn the intermediate routes. Like, yeah, he had 868 yards and 8 touchdowns this year, but he's got to. That's deep. He mostly goes deep. If he's going to be wide receiver 1, he's got to be able to run every route in the route tree. And I don't think he can.
I think wide receiver 1 is going to be split between like 3 people and 2 tight ends.
What were you going to say? What were you saying, Cody? I couldn't hear you.
I don't think Cam Newton can hit him either.
I don't think because the deep ball is not going to be there. Cam overshoots or undershoots every time. And this makes this other guy, he's also kind of a speedster, but he was buried on the 49ers depth chart, and they gave him about $7 million a season in Kendrick Bourne. I like the deal a little bit better than the Agholor deal because it's a little bit less. It's spread out a little bit more. And Kendrick Bourne has a higher ceiling. We haven't really gotten to see him. He flashed in San Francisco, but we haven't really gotten to see him play too much. How do you like the fit there?
I actually think that might be one of the sneaky good moves of day one so far. And Jimmy Garoppolo probably ends up back in New England before the end of the offseason. He was raving about him. So.
And then we got Harry Anderson today. I'm just doing today's deals. I know things happened before with the Patriots like Cam and stuff, but then they got Harry Anderson from the Jets defensive line. They got him cheap, 3.5 a season. That guy's a jerk, and I don't like him. So Harry Anderson, I'm talking about, even before the Patriots, I just don't like him.
He was a Jet.
He was a Jet, but it wasn't that he was a Jet. He was just a nasty Jet. Cheap shots galore. There are Jets players I like, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
It's so Frank Gore. He's not even really a Jet.
I'm talking about Frank Gore. There's other Jets that I like. So we're gonna stay in the AFC East, and we're gonna talk about the Jets. The Jets also were big players, and I think the Jets had a better day than the Patriots. I know the Patriots filled more holes and they got 6, 7 players, but the Jets got Gerard Davis. They, I don't like him as a starter if C.J. Mosley leaves, but it makes C.J. Mosley leaving a little bit easier because they can get picks for C.J. Mosley. They can draft a linebacker if they need to. I like that. They got him for pretty cheap, only $7 million. But my favorite signing is Corey Davis. I think he fits that offense. He's big. He's physical. He's a reliable target, and he's got good hands. And they locked him up. I mean, 12, almost 13 million a season is a little much, I think. But I think the Jets have to overpay just like the Patriots because they've been so bad. So, what do you guys think about that fit?
I think he's underrated because of being in Tennessee in a run-first offense.
You think he's
being
gonna
number
help
two
that?
behind A.J. Brown.
You think he's gonna help that Jets offense?
Oh yeah, yeah. He doesn't drop a whole lot of passes. He's usually got sure hands, and when A.J. Brown was taken away, he's the guy that stepped up. It was, if A.J. Brown didn't have 100 yards, Corey Davis did. So
Wide receiver 1 in New York, you think, right?
probably, yeah. I mean, Mims is best as a 2, probably.
This is a young. They also got a young, athletic defensive end, Carl Lawson, 3 years, 45 mil. That's about the market for him I anticipated. So that's not an overpayment to me. But young, he's only 25 years old. He's really explosive. He had the most quarterback hits last year. Well, he was tied for the most. I feel like that's a good edge rusher in Robert Saleh's defense. And I think I was talking to Austin and Warren earlier. If they get a couple corners, I think that team can compete. Maybe second or third in the division, possibly. I mean, I really like the moves. What do you think? Who had the better day if we're comparing AFC East teams? Do you think the Jets or the Patriots?
Definitely not the Dolphins.
The Dolphins did nothing but sign a fullback.
They signed a fullback. That's something.
Warren, I'll ask you because you're an AFC East guy. Who had a better day, the Jets or the Patriots?
I think the Jets filled more holes, but I think in terms of who's going to be better, it's hard to say. I think if Darnold comes back, I think the Jets could be better than the Patriots. But if the Jets draft a QB at 2, then you're going to have a rookie QB coming in and trying to relearn that system. And I think that the Patriots will have the edge this year. But I think either way, they'll finish in some combination of 3-4 next year.
All right. What about you, Cody? Patriots, Jets.
So I think the Patriots filled a lot of needs, but I like the players the Jets got better. Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne are both upgrades over what New England had at wide receiver, but I wouldn't call them upgraded enough to significantly improve that offense. Corey Davis was one of my favorite wide receiver free agents. Carl Lawson was my favorite defense end free agent. I was hoping Dallas would go get him.
I knew you would like it because I thought of you when I saw those signings because you've been telling me how much you like both those players a lot. So.
Then Gerard Davis, I think, was a good signing too. I was a little surprised it was only a 1-year, $7 million deal, but maybe he wanted the short deal to go hit free agency again next year too.
It's more of a prove it deal from what I understood from what people were saying earlier. It's more like he wanted a chance to earn more money next offseason. Maybe not necessarily leave, but to earn more money, definitely. And so next I want to move on to talk about the teams in the AFC North. So some quiet. Well, let me ask you a question. Hendrickson, right? The Bengals brought him in for 60. Or Lawson. Do you think the Bengals downgraded, even, or slightly above? What do you think in terms of Lawson for Hendrickson?
Who you asking?
You.
Me? I think they downgraded. Lawson's more of a well-rounded player. Hendrickson's more of a pure pass rusher. He's not as good against the run as what Lawson is. Lawson he was good against the run and he could get pressure too. I think in terms of pure pass rushing ability, Hendrickson's probably better at that. But a lot of people get caught up in sacks. They're not everything. You got to stop the run too. But I do think that while their pressure will be a little bit better, they're going to lose some in the run game.
Okay. All right. And let's see. Well, the Vikings are active right now. They just signed Nick Vigil too, which we didn't post yet. Got him for $1 million for 1 year.
Bad signing.
We'll talk about that later, though. Now let's move on to the Steelers. So the Steelers lost a lot today. Bud Dupree, Matt Filer, Hilton possibly going to the Bengals. That hasn't happened yet, so that's why we didn't discuss it yet. But they're close, I hear. So the Steelers got one piece I said when we did the Steelers that they needed. They needed to re-sign Hilton or Sutton. They re-signed Sutton. He's the cheaper of the two options. But they're losing a lot. No Bud Dupree. They lost Matt Filer. They're probably going to lose Alejandro Villanueva. They're going to re-sign Zach Banner, the offensive lineman, but they lost Marquise Pouncey on that offensive line. They're going to lose Juju. Obviously, we already knew that was going to happen.
I mean, Juju also voted on the poll, will Juju be back? And he voted no, he won't be back. So
Then he
Well,
said
he
it
knew
in his
that.
Instagram post that he wasn't
He
coming
said
back.
it in an interview. Yep, and today he said it to the team. He said send a goodbye letter. So what can the Steelers do bargain shopping wise to retool?
I think they're going to have to wait till free agency comes down for the most part, and they're going to be left with the scraps, or they're going to be left with players that don't get deals because their team signed somebody better, or they're going to have to take the guys that just weren't good enough to get the good deals and have to settle for whatever scraps are left out there, which in the midst of the COVID signings is not going to be a ton. Although there might be some bargain steals from guys that get cut because teams don't have enough money to pay them, but your top tier talent's not going to be there.
All right. I think the Steelers, they're going to have to fix that offensive line. I think they're going to have to draft well. I mean, defensively, the two corners they're returning are all right. I mean, that works. They're going to have to get a nickel corner, though. They're going to have to replace Bud Dupree. I mean, they did at the end of last year a little bit, so I think they'll be okay there. Defensively, they're always good. Mike Tomlin always has them prepared, but offensively worries me a little bit. Ben already was checked down king, and they're going to have to check down even more next season without the offensive line. So, I just
really
don't know. Go ahead.
They're going to need to hit big in the draft. Like I'm talking, they cannot miss on a single pick. Every one of their picks are going to have to contribute this year, I think.
Yeah, they're going to have to get some guards. They're going to have to get a tackle. They're going to have to get a linebacker, maybe maybe a corner, like I said, a nickel corner.
Tight end.
Yeah, tight end. They're set at safety though, with Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds still. And then if we move on to another team in that division, the Ravens, they lost Matt Judon. They lost somebody else I can't remember, but yes, Yannick Ngakoue, and they lost Mark Ingram, but that was for conclusion. We knew that. Do they need to replace somebody on the defensive end position now? They signed. Who did they sign? I have it all written down here. So. Oh no, they didn't make any. Oh, they signed somebody yesterday. That's right. They didn't sign anybody today. So realistically, what can they do to replace those missing pieces on the defensive line? The pass rushers are going quick and for good money. So who's left? Who's left that they can bring in to contribute?
That's a good question. A lot of as you said, a lot of the more marquee names have already gone off the board.
I think they'll be in a similar situation to the Steelers where they're gonna have to get more of the bargain defensive ends.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll look it up later. At the end, I want to go over who's left. So maybe we'll piece somebody to them later because I want to go over like who fits the remaining. Maybe after the first wave. And so the Browns did nothing except for they signed Johnson, the safety from the Rams. That's a good signing. They like Rodney Harrison, but they're going to probably rotate him in with Carl Joseph and
So
who's the other guy?
Carl
Villanueva is
Jo-
gone. So
Carl Joseph's a free agent,
that's right. They
Oh.
have Rodney Harrison and now they have John Johnson.
and I think they probably let Carl Joseph walk now because John Johnson can play both safeties best.
And I think that's a good signing. I mean, not too much, didn't break the bank. I mean, 11 million a season's decent money for a safety, but not great. So I like what they did. So the same question for the AFC North. Now that everybody participated today, who got better? Who got better by the most? Do you think like
The
Bengals? You said that was a wash. Hendrickson for Lawson.
Didn't they
the
also
Browns-
find a safety?
No, not yet. They're close with Hilton, but they didn't. He's a corner, and they didn't sign him yet, though. They only added Hendrickson. They lost Carl Lawson, so Cody would say that's a downgrade. So, do you think the Browns made out the best?
I kind of do, and it's only because of that. I think John Johnson's one of the really underrated safeties in this free agent class. He doesn't get a whole lot of credit coming out of LA. He's a guy no one knows who it is. I've seen a bunch of people say who when they announce the signing on Twitter and stuff.
Right.
And
But to me, it's like it's by default that the Browns have to be the most improved team because everybody got significantly worse. Right? I mean,
well, the Steelers weren't going to get any better with their cap situation.
Ravens aren't in a good cap situation either.
No, the Ravens aren't, and they lost two of their best pass rushers. I mean, Melvin Ingram's still out there as a guy that they could bring in.
They were looking at him at the market for him. I think the Bills are still in for a defensive end and a tight end too. So we're bargain hunting now too. So we'll see what happens with those. Those are people that the Bills are monitoring too, a tight end and maybe Melvin Ingram or somebody like that. But I mean that's an option. We didn't talk about that when we talked about Baltimore. That's an option. He's still got some left, I think. I mean, now a big name could hit free agency tomorrow. And we're going to talk about that in a minute because we're going to switch to the AFC West real quick. So the Chiefs brought in one signing today, Joe Thuney, 5 years, $80 million. Is that enough to offset losing their tackles, or?
Well, he's a guard, so.
Well, I know, but they have that guy Liang that they like, who's going to play one tackle spot. They're still missing another tackle, but they needed a guard badly. I think Thuney is the best guard on the. Was he the best offensive lineman available in general, or?
I think
he got paid like it.
It was a toss up between him and Lindsley, I think.
Lindsey got the higher average per year, so.
But well, now I'm seeing that Lindsley actually got 5 years instead of 3. I don't know. I've heard both.
I've heard both too, so I don't really know.
But I think it's a toss up between him and Thuney, and they both end up going to the same division. So.
Okay, they did end up going to the same division. That's the next one. So the Chargers also boasted their offensive line, signing Lindsley. They got 3 or 5 years, whatever. He got $62.5 million, so whatever price point that was. And they got Matt Filer from the Steelers, their offensive tackle that they lost, 3 years, $21 million. That was a big problem last year for the Chargers, and I'm glad that they are taking steps. We thought that they would drop off after Pouncey left. We thought they would drop off a little bit on the offensive line. Then they go out and they send the best center available. And they had a tackle that they really needed desperately too. So Chargers improved, right?
I'd say they did. Warren, what do you think of the Lindsley signing with the Chargers?
Terrible move. Totally should have gone to Miami. But I mean, in all seriousness, it's a good move. You look at the big 3 QBs out of the quarterback class last year, Tua, Herbert, and Burrow, and all 3 teams have made it a priority this year to address the offensive line.
Miami
you know,
hasn't done that yet, so we don't know if it's a priority. We don't know what they're doing.
well, I mean, the Chargers brought in Lindsley. Miami traded with Tennessee. I think
Oh,
the
that's
Bengals,
right. That's right.
the
They did.
Bengals signed one, right?
Not yet.
No, not yet. They signed
yet.
people like as soon as Burrow got hurt, though.
They did sign a couple. They
Yeah,
did.
so
They
they
signed
brought in
Quentin
some
Spain.
guys when he got hurt. The Chargers went
Right.
after Lindsey. Miami traded with Tennessee to get a kind of low risk, high reward target. So all three teams are kind of saying, "Hey, let's keep these guys upright and see if they can turn into something."
Miami also brought in a fullback as a sixth lineman just in case.
Hey,
So
that
they
was
did
our
bring in a
one
fullback.
thing. I mean, hey, Miami's gonna have like 50 to 70 million in cap space next year. So next year, man, anybody that we want.
So, Miami is still in on Galladay though. So don't think they're not going to
So
do
we'll
nothing.
have
I'm
40
sure
to
that-
60 million next year. Okay.
I think they're still in on Galladay. It's between them and the Giants from everything I'm seeing right now.
Which is really weird to me because you'd think you'd want to go to a more proven quarterback than either one of them.
You would think so, but apparently not. So,
Has there been
um,
any news about Hunter Henry?
not yet.
I would have thought he would have been gone.
Only Johnny Smith went for tight ends. Nobody else. No other tight end. I'm just making sure that I haven't missed anything really quick, and then we'll move on. That just leaves who else? The Broncos. The Broncos made two moves today. They re-signed Shelby Harris, defensive tackle. Big for them. That was big. They needed him, and they went and because Kareem Jackson's leaving, they signed Ronald Darby, 3 years, $30 million, who had a bounce back season last year, and he's good. So what do you think about what the Broncos did? Really, Darby's the addition. Do you think that helps that secondary more than them letting go Kareem Jackson because they did not pick up his option?
Kareem Jackson was a safety, so I don't think it.
Was he a safety? I thought he was a corner. Never mind. He was a safety then. Don't mind me. Well, does Ronald Darby help them? Is he enough to bolster that secondary? I know they had issues at corner last year.
I'm gonna
Oh
say
no, they let AJ Boye walk. That's right.
yeah. I don't think that Darby is an upgrade over Boye. I also don't. I'm not sold on Darby being a great cornerback either, but I think that they're being proactive at least in the sense of we're losing guys in the secondary, so we got to go out and get some. And Darby was probably one of the better names available.
Fair enough. Now, who in that division did anybody do? Oh, we've got the Raiders. The Raiders signed Yannick Ngakoue. 2 years, $26 million. I thought he could get a little bit more, but that's a good deal for the Raiders, don't you think?
Yeah, I think provided he doesn't become a distraction in those 2 years and decide that he wants to be traded for the 17th time in 3 seasons.
Yeah, he's been on 4 teams in a year. That's a red flag, right? Right, Warren? Or bad luck?
Yeah.
Bad luck. Like if you look at why he was traded by the Jags because the Jags like gutted the entire team around him. Then the
Well, because he wanted out. He made it clear. They tagged him and he wanted out. Like he made that.
But the reason he wanted out was because the Jags were dysfunctional and they gutted everything around him.
What happened in Minnesota though?
The Minnesota came out and said that they were trading him because they were out of the playoffs. They thought like they did not think they were going to be able to make it back and they wanted draft capital.
Then he went to the Ravens.
Yeah.
He was just a rental there for half a season. So
Yeah, he was basically a mercenary.
So did anybody do anything to catch up to the Chiefs? I know the Chiefs are having trouble at tackle, but do you think that anybody got closer to closing that gap?
I think the Chiefs closed that gap by themselves.
But what about the moves? Like the Chargers bolstering the line, that helps them. That's what they needed. Raiders getting Ngakoue a pass rusher. In the Broncos, I don't think Darby's going to help very much. But anyways,
I don't
you
think the
think that
Broncos will be challenging the Chiefs anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's, we can talk about, oh, this team might have gotten closer, but when push comes to shove, nobody really, okay, granted, yes, were the Chargers able to put a little bit of pressure on them in their, I'm going to say the one matchup, because in the second matchup they played the bench, but say the Chiefs didn't care, and maybe the Chargers make a run on them, but the Chargers also have a new head coach and a new system coming in. So, granted, personnel wise, they might be stronger, but what step back are they going to take adjusting to the new coach? By the end of the year, they might be twice as good as they were this year, but how many games are they going to lose in the beginning while they kind of gel that system? So they might end up being worse in the beginning, better at the end, and end up not really gaining any ground on the Chiefs because of that. So it's
Right.
hard to say.
Right.
Actually, thinking about it, Yannick to the Raiders are the only team that beat the Chiefs starters in the regular season.
And they have Max Crosby on the other side.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. And was scary.
And the Chiefs get rid of both their tackles. They got an unproven guy who didn't play last year at manning one tackle, and no one knows who they're getting for the other tackle yet. So
with the rest of this time in this video, I want to talk about the Titans. Now, we'll do the rest of the division after. But the Titans, their defense was horrendous. Their offense wasn't bad, but they lost two big pieces on the offense. They lost Jonnu Smith. They lost Corey Davis. They'll have to replace one or the other, maybe both. But they added defensive pass rushers. They had trouble stopping the run. They had trouble against the pass. They added Danico Autry from the Colts, 3 years, 27 million or 29 million, something like that. And then they added Bud Dupree, 5 years, $82.5 million, 16.5 a season. So, I mean, I know they need to do more. I know they cut Malcolm Butler. They need a corner badly. But does that help them? I mean, are they a better team losing the offensive pieces and gaining the defensive pieces? Or, I mean, they still got shopping to do, so we'll see what they do. But what does anybody think about the Titans?
I think losing the. Oh, go ahead, Austin.
I think it'll just kind of be a wash because of losing Jonnu and Corey Davis. Like, Jonnu Smith was very underrated as a blocker. I put him as one of the best blocking tight ends. And so unless they can find someone who can block like he can to replace that, like, their team is built around Derrick Henry.
What about Ferkser, or they just signed another tight end who's a blocker that they had? I mean, they brought back their other tight ends too. I mean, Ferkser and the other tight end are good blockers too.
Until I see them manhandling pass rushers, I'm not putting them with Jonnu Smith.
Well, Johnny was the starters. We got to see more of him than the others.
I've been giving that to Whitney.
What about Corey Davis? Do they have to replace him? I mean, they lost Adam Humphries too, right? I mean, they need to bring in a receiver now.
Corey Davis, like Cody talked about a couple weeks ago, like the games that AJ Brown was bad, Corey Davis was great, and vice versa. Like,
but the thing is, like, they got rid of Humphries, they got rid of Corey Davis. What are they going to do at receiver outside of AJ Brown?
Draft.
I think they'll draft a receiver, but then they got other holes. They got to fill holes at corner. They badly need a corner.
They can take a receiver day 3 that can step in and help. It's another deep receiver class. So
they just need a receiver 2 now. I think they do have to replace Jono. I think you're right. And then I think they need a corner now.
I don't even think they really need a receiver 2 because that's not really their game style.
Yeah,
so, like they could put in. So they just need a guy over there, really, because
I think they need
on the ball and play.
I think they need a running back who can catch out of the backfield.
Is that guy on their team though? Who they could place over there at receiver 2? I mean, is that guy on their team, or do they have to get somebody?
Probably have to get somebody, but
what about a guy like John Brown? He's going to be cheap out here. His market value is like $4 million.
Be a good fit because Tannehill likes to throw the deep ball off the play action, but can you trust him not to get hurt? That's my question on John Brown.
Probably not. That's why the Bills cut him. But
I think, like, the Titans needed to fix that defense because I don't know what happened from one year to the next, but that defense kept them in games and allowed them to just run the ball.
Well, they needed
Weird,
Autry to
yeah.
come in because they got rid of Daquan Jones, their defensive tackle. Autry's a slightly better version of Jones, so that's a wash. I mean, that's better for them. Then they got rid of like Jadeveon Clowney, which they used in that outside linebacker stand-up position, which is where they're going to put Bud Dupree. And I think Bud Dupree's a better pass rusher than Jadeveon Clowney, so I think he can
Well,
get more pressure.
I bet he has more tackles in the first game than Clowney did all season. So
Well, Clowney got hurt, so
yeah, but he played 8 games for him. He just didn't do nothing.
I think that Tennessee's better in the front seven, but they still have to add to that secondary.
So my biggest problem with Tennessee is like you go into a game knowing what they're gonna do, and Derrick Henry, while being amazing, like I'm one of the first people to come on here and say that I love Derrick Henry and I love how he plays, but he's not a good receiving back, and I think that's what they need for their team.
I think that you are right that he's not a good
Because
receiving
we've
back.
seen in their playoff losses when they just put 7 to 9 guys in the box, like Derrick Henry can't win.
Right.
Oh, and that was going to be kind of my maybe unpopular take was that they have really done, they've let some offensive weapons go. They let Jonnu Smith go. They let Corey Davis go. And these are guys that are kind of unheralded and kind of fly under the radar for them because, it's AJ Brown, it's obviously Derrick Henry, and Tannehill's been great with Henry. But when you get those games against those, great run stopping defenses where they're able to, I'm going to say contain because you're not going to shut down Derrick Henry, but you can contain him.
They did. The playoff
But for the most part, over the course of a season, how many
6
times are you really going to totally shut him down? Maybe twice.
The Texans did it both times.
Well, and
Did they
against
win those
Buffalo,
games,
he had like 20
Almost. Yeah,
carries
they
for
made
60
Ryan
yards.
Tannehill beat them. Both of the games were by 3 points.
I mean, the Bills
I'm
shut
willing
down
to bet though
Derrick
that
Henry,
both
but
Jonnu
we
Smith and
could.
Corey Davis needed.
I was
But
gonna
those
say,
are games where that's kind of my point though, is that when those games happen, you're going to need some guys. And if it's a case where they've isolated and shut down Henry, you put 2 guys over there on AJ Brown. If nobody else can beat him, you kind of have him pigeonholed. So they're going to need somebody, whether they address it in the draft, whether they address it in free agency. I think that they need to be careful and not totally ignoring the offense at this point, or they might find themselves in the position similar to Miami this year where their defense is great, but their offense sputters at times. And they'll have a way better offense in terms of Derrick Henry being better than anything Miami had this year. I'm in no way making that comparison. But I just, in that sense of awesome defense and subpar offense.
I think
Right.
their biggest problem is they've been winning games with Derrick Henry, and they've been winning the division or making the playoffs with Derrick Henry, so they don't feel the need to change it up. Like if you're winning games and
That's
you're
a
making it to the
problem,
playoffs every
though.
time, you don't feel the need to change it up.
Yeah, and then you don't change it up until it's too late, and then you're not good for a couple
Yeah,
of
and
years.
then you're 5-11 because Derrick Henry gets hurt finally. You don't have a backup plan.
That was exactly what I was going to say, and I don't want it to happen. What if he gets hurt? What are they going to do?
You guys stole the words right out of my mouth. What happens? He's had what, over 700, almost 800 touches in the last 2 years. Yeah, he's young. Yeah, he's a big bruiser, but at some point he's going to get a nagging ankle sprain or a nagging knee tweak or something that's going to slow him down enough where now he becomes kind of mortal. And now what does that offense do when they don't have the bell cow back to just run over everybody all game long?
That's why I think they need like someone like James White. That's one of the signings I want to go to Tennessee.
Yeah, not a ton of running backs got signed today. Actually, I don't think any running backs got signed today. And